When I got into a car accident, my fiancée still went to a concert with her male best friend. I told her, don't let him down. When she came home, I was gone, and my note said, hope the show was worth it. Hey, Reddit. 6 months ago, my fiancée ditched me while I was laid up from a car accident to go party with her best friend. I didn't yell. I just erased myself from her life. Quietly, completely. What happened after that? Let's rewind to where it all started. My name's Dante Rivera, 32, project manager at a construction firm in downtown Phoenix. My life runs on precision, schedules, budgets, and deadlines. I'm not the loudest man in the room, but when I speak, people listen. That's all I've ever needed. My fiancée, Caitlin, 29, runs her own social media consultancy. She's the opposite of me. Flashy, expressive, always holding her phone like a mirror that proves she exists. Her followers call her authentic. I've seen enough filters to know better. Then there's Nico Moreno, her best friend since college. A broke musician with more followers than talent. The kind of guy who smells like potential but lives off whoever he's dating. Or in this case, whoever he's best friends with. He's got charm for rent and ambition on layaway. The first time I met him, he walked into our apartment like it was his. Waved, grinned, grabbed a drink and told me, man, you're lucky, Caitlin's one of a kind. I smiled back because men like him feed off reaction. But in my head, I was already measuring the distance between the door and his ego. My friend Caesar saw through it from day one. He's 33, my coworker, the guy who keeps the humor dry. He's the balance between cynicism and reason. After he met Caitlin and Nico once, he said, that's not a best friend, that's an unpaid boyfriend. I laughed it off back then, thought maybe I was being territorial. Love makes you generous with excuses. By spring, Caitlin's career was taking off, and she'd wake up posting affirmations, spend the day chasing clients who never paid on time, then fall asleep scrolling through other people's highlight reels. Every argument ended the same way. You don't support me. I did. I was there. I paid rent, car insurance, and every streaming bill. I made dinner when she was editing reels at midnight. Support wasn't the issue. Attention was. Nico was around more often than not. He'd drop by with new tracks, play half a song, and sprawl on our couch while Caitlin hyped him up. Sometimes he'd crash after they'd been brainstorming. His toothbrush eventually appeared in our bathroom. Caitlin called it no big deal. The breaking point came 2 years in, our anniversary. I made a reservation at a quiet steakhouse, one of the few places in the city where the lights are low and people don't film their food. I booked it a month ahead, bought her a dress she'd once pointed out, and even printed the confirmation like an idiot trying too hard. At 6:30, I'm at the table. By 7 o'clock, my phone buzzes. Babe, I'm so sorry. Nico booked a last-minute rehearsal for a show next week. I promised I'd help with content. No apology call. No, I'll make it up to you. Just that. I stared at the screen, then typed back, do what you need to do. I paid for a drink I didn't want and left. Outside, the night air felt sharp. I called Caesar. Where are you at? He asked. Steakhouse, I said. Table for 2, party of 1. He didn't ask questions, just said, stay there, I'm 10 minutes out. When he arrived, he sat across from me and signaled the waiter. 2 bourbons, he said. He's paying. I'm consoling. We drank, talked work, joked about sports, anything but her. At some point, he glanced at my phone lighting up. She texting? Probably posting, I said. Nico's rehearsal deserves an audience. He smirked. Man, you're dating a PR firm for one person. I almost laughed. Almost. Caitlin got home past midnight, smelling like stage lights and cheap beer. I was on the couch, laptop open, half-finished reports on the screen. She dropped her bag and started explaining before I said a word. It was a huge deal for him, babe. He needed my help. You know how much this show means. I closed the laptop and our anniversary meant less. Her tone shifted from defensive to dismissive in seconds. You're being dramatic. It's one dinner. I'll reschedule. You skipped it, I said, keeping my voice even. That's not scheduling, that's choosing. She crossed her arms. You're controlling again. I stood up slowly, not angry, just done. I'm not controlling, I said. I'm just finally paying attention. Silence. She blinked like she hadn't heard that line before. Maybe she hadn't. I walked past her, went to the bedroom and changed for bed. She stood in the living room for a while, typing furiously on her phone, probably updating her followers about communication struggles. Around 2:00 a.m., I woke up to the glow of her phone lighting the wall. She was lying beside me, scrolling through comments. Nico's name popped up on her screen, little fire emojis under one of her posts. She smiled at it like a reflex. I turned over, stared at the ceiling, and thought about Caesar's words. That's not a best friend. He was right. The apartment felt smaller, the air thicker. Her laugh from earlier still echoed in the hallway. Somewhere between her stories and his music, I'd stopped existing in her world. In the morning, she was gone before I woke, left a sticky note on the counter. Love you, babe. Don't forget to eat. No apology, no mention of last night, just a half-hearted routine she thought would smooth things over. I crumpled the note, tossed it in the trash, and looked out the kitchen window at the city still waking up. Everything looked the same. Streets, sunlight, skyline. But something in me had shifted. Quietly, without a scene, I realized I'd already started to leave her. I stayed late at the office that night. The rest of the crew cleared out hours earlier, but I kept grinding through schedules and reports. Quiet floors suit me. No noise, no distractions, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the rattle of air vents. Caesar had popped his head in before he left. Don't die at your desk, boss man. You make the rest of us look lazy. I told him, you already look lazy. And he laughed his way out the door. Typical Caesar. Sarcasm first, concern second. By the time I finished, the sky was ink black and wet. The city smelled like asphalt and burnt coffee. I loosened my tie and stepped into the parking lot. Rain dripped from the awning and streaked the hood of my car. I slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and let the radio fill the silence. The drive home was quiet, streetlights blurred across the windshield. My shoulders ached from 12 hours of tension. I thought about Caitlin, how distant she'd been lately. How her voice always softened for Nico but went sharp for me. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A text from her lighting the screen. Heading to Nico's to plan the concert. Big night. No. How was your day? No. Drive safe. I set the phone face down. The rain thickened. I took the exit toward home, easing off the gas. The last thing I remember clearly was the flash of another car drifting across the lane. A small blue sedan. Driver's head tilted toward a glowing phone. Impact. A sound like metal splitting. The airbag exploded against my chest, hot powder filling my nose and throat. Everything went white, then black, then ringing. Sharp, endless ringing. When I came to, the smell of burnt rubber filled the car. My ribs screamed every time I moved. The windshield was spiderwebbed with cracks, raindrops sneaking through them in thin, silver lines. Outside, traffic slowed, faces turned, horns blared somewhere distant. I forced the door open and half fell into the street. Cold air slapped my face, bringing the world back into focus. The taste of iron, the pulse behind my temples, the faint orange of hazard lights bouncing off wet pavement. The paramedics came quick. I told them my name, kept my answers short. Pain is easier when you don't describe it. They strapped me to a board, loaded me into the ambulance, and the siren carried me through the city I'd built a life in. I woke up in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and metal. A nurse was adjusting the IV line. She told me I'd gotten lucky. Bruised ribs, mild concussion, nothing broken that wouldn't heal. My phone sat on the table beside the bed. I reached for it slowly, thumb trembling from the adrenaline still running through me. No missed calls, just notifications from work and one from a group chat I didn't care about. I called Caitlin. She picked up on the second ring. Music and laughter spilled through the speaker before her voice. "Hey babe, what's up? I'm just getting ready." I could hear Nico talking in the background, his tone playful, familiar. "Where are you?" I asked. "Getting dressed," she said. "We're heading to the show in like 20. It's a big night. He's been waiting for this gig for months." I exhaled slowly. "I'm in a car accident." Silence for 2 beats, then, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like how bad?" "Hospital bad," I said. "Couple ribs, mild concussion." Her tone shifted. Not worry, but inconvenience. "Babe, that's awful. But you're okay, right? I mean, you've got doctors there. I can't bail on him now. He's counting on me." I stared at the ceiling. "Right?" I said flatly. "Wouldn't want to let him down." She laughed, awkward and unsure. "You know how much this means to him. I'll check on you tomorrow. Promise. Love you." Click. The line went dead. I lay there listening to the quiet hum of machines, the steady beep of the monitor. My hands felt heavy on the blanket. No anger, no tears, just a sharp kind of calm that cuts deeper than either. By morning, they cleared me to leave. I was stiff but steady. The nurse offered a wheelchair. I told her I'd walk. She gave me a look but didn't argue. Caesar showed up with a coffee in one hand and my jacket in the other. "You look like hell," he said. "Good," I answered. "Matches how I feel." He set the coffee on the tray. "Heard about the crash. You good?" "Never better," I said. "I just woke up." He studied me for a second, reading what I didn't say. "You call her?" "Yeah," and I slipped my jacket on carefully. "She had plans." He shook his head. "Of course she did." We walked down the hallway together, my steps slow, ribs aching under the wrap. Outside, the air was clean and cold, the kind that clears everything you thought you knew. Caesar unlocked his truck. "Where to?" "Home," I said. "For now," he nodded. "For now," he echoed. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I watched the hospital fade in the side mirror. My reflection looked different. Same face, new expression. Some things break loud, others just stop working, and you don't realize until they're already gone. That night, mine stopped working, and she didn't even notice. I got home just after noon. The pain medicine had worn off, and every breath pressed against the bruises under my ribs. Still, I moved. No pacing, no shouting, just action. The apartment looked like a stage after the show ended. Her ring light sat on the table. A makeup palette was open beside her laptop, still plugged in from the night before. The couch smelled faintly of her perfume, sweet and artificial. I stood in the doorway, scanning everything once. Then I got to work. The suitcase came down from the closet first. I packed my clothes, shoes, tools, anything I bought with my money. I moved slow, steady. The bruises made lifting hard, but I didn't stop. Pain didn't matter. Finishing did. Her closet door stayed closed. I wasn't here to damage anything or leave messages in broken glass. I wanted silence. Final, clean silence. When the suitcases were full, I canceled the internet account and boxed the router and cable box. It was all in my name, the insurance file and the car lease too. Everything in that apartment ran through me, and I was cutting the power. I sat at the kitchen counter, opened my laptop, and started closing tabs on her life. First, the cell plan. A few clicks with the carrier and her line went dark. Next, the credit card I'd added her to. Reported lost, canceled. Utilities scheduled to start at the new address the day I signed the lease. Lease termination, 30 days notice paid in full. Email confirmation sent to the landlord. Each confirmation email felt like tightening a bolt on a machine that had been rattling for months. Halfway through, my ribs cramped. I sat down, breathing through it, then stood up again. The body complains when it's tired. The mind doesn't have to listen. When I finished, I went back through each room, checking drawers and shelves. Anything that belonged to her stayed. Anything that didn't fit the next chapter went into a box. By evening, the apartment was hollow. The faint echo when I walked across the floor told me what I already knew. This place wasn't mine anymore. It was a shell. I grabbed a pen and one of her notepads from the counter. The top page was filled with content ideas and hashtags. Self-growth hashtag Monday motivation. I flipped it over and wrote a single line. Hope the show was worth it. Go be his priority. I placed the note in the center of the counter next to her laptop. No explanation, no accusations, just truth, stripped down to the bone. A knock came about an hour later. I opened the door to find Caesar standing there with 2 cardboard boxes and that same steady look he wore when things got serious. Didn't think you'd actually do it this fast, he said quietly. I don't like waiting around, I told him. He stepped inside, took a look around. No jokes this time, no sarcastic smirk, just a slow nod. Clean break, he said. That's the point. He started loading the last of my boxes into his truck while I gathered the rest of my gear. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. When everything was packed, we stood in the doorway one last time. Caitlin's framed photo wall stared back, her laughing with Nico, her holding a camera, her posing in light she didn't earn. We locked up, loaded the boxes into the back of his truck, and got in. Caesar started the engine. The air smelled like rain in the city at night. He drove without music. The tires hummed against the wet pavement, a steady, uncomplicated sound. Where to? He asked without glancing over. Your place, I said. He gave me a look that said he knew why. You sure? I don't want home right now, I said. I want someplace quiet, somewhere I wouldn't think about her when I fell asleep. Caesar's expression softened like a hand, smoothing a fabric. Good. You can crash on the couch. I'll set up something with blankets, no speeches, just sleep. And we rolled through streets that still smelled of rain and late-night grease. The city moved by in a blur of lights and shuttered storefronts. I watched the reflections jump off the wet road and felt the tightness in my chest loosen just enough to breathe without flinching. At Caesar's place, he carried my bags inside and set them by the couch. His apartment was a mess of practicality. Tools on the shelf, a faded vinyl collection, a workbench in the corner. No ring lights, no curated corners. It smelled of oil, coffee, and the kind of calm that doesn't need validation. He tossed me his spare key. Take the couch, I'll be up late. If you want coffee in the morning, you know where the kettle is. I dropped onto the couch. The cushions swallowed some of the ache in my ribs. I didn't call Caitlin. I didn't check her posts. I didn't want to know if she'd see the light in our window or the note on the counter. Ignorance felt deliberate and clean. Caesar sat at his workbench fiddling with some old screws. After a while, he looked over and said, "You did the hard thing." "Hard thing is staying," I replied, "and leaving's just logistics." He grunted, half laughing. "Okay, logistics king, get some sleep." I let the dark come. The pain threaded through me, but it didn't break me. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, for the first time in a long while, a plan had teeth. Before I slept, I thought of the note on the kitchen counter and the small glow of the lamp I'd left on. I pictured her reading it, the light making the words plain. No spectacle, no crowd, just truth. Caesar's footsteps faded into the background. His presence was the kind that steadied a man without asking him to explain why. I didn't leave in anger. I left in precision. And by dawn, she'd find the apartment the way I left it. Clean, empty, and finally quiet. Caitlin came back on a Sunday night, still riding that post-concert high. I wasn't there to see it, but I know her routine: door swing, heels first, voice loud, laughter bouncing off the walls. I imagine it died the moment she saw the apartment. Everything that once screamed, "our life," looked stripped and clean. My things were gone, her equipment still on the counter, and one folded note waiting beside her laptop. I didn't need to see her face to picture it. Confusion first, then realization, then fury. The first email came an hour later. "You're insane." Then a text. You can't just vanish like this. Another voicemail followed, crying, voice cracking, sentences looping. You're emotionally abusive, Dante. You know that this is manipulation. I didn't reply. I let the notifications pile up until the sound stopped meaning anything. By morning, I'd signed a short-term lease on a small apartment near the industrial strip. It wasn't much. Bare walls, a working fridge, no echo of her voice. I called Caesar and told him I needed help moving the last few boxes. He didn't ask questions, he just said, "On my way." We hauled everything out of his truck in under an hour. He didn't talk much, which I appreciated. When we finished, he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Call me if you need anything that isn't closure." Then he left me with the quiet. That night, I slept on a mattress on the floor. No ring lights, no perfume in the air, no voice rehearsing content ideas at 2 a.m. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like punishment. By midweek, Caitlin had rebranded her grief. Her feed turned into a stream of quotes and half-truths about healing. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself, one caption said, complete with a crying mirror selfie. The comments called her brave. I called it acting. Nico was in the first few posts, tagged, smiling, pretending to care. By the weekend, he disappeared. No tags, no mentions. I didn't have to guess why. The rent was gone. The streaming subscriptions canceled. When the perks dried up, so did his loyalty. Friday, Caesar texted me. "Bar tonight? You need to see this circus." We met at our usual spot by the river. Cheap beer, good burgers, dim lighting. The kind of place that doesn't care who you used to be. Caesar scrolled through his phone, grinning. "She's doing a 5-part TED Talk on victimhood," he said. "This one's called When They Leave Without Closure." I took a sip of my beer. "She's always loved the spotlight." He nodded. "You realize you're the villain in her story now?" "I was the stagehand," I said. "I just stopped fixing the lights." We laughed quietly, not cruelly, just with that tired understanding men get when the storm is already past. By the next week, the messages slowed down but didn't stop. She alternated between guilt and guilt-tripping. "I just want to talk." Then, "I hope you're happy destroying people." I ignored everyone. She wasn't reaching out to apologize. She wanted a reaction. I wasn't giving her one. Thursday afternoon, I was wrapping up a meeting when the receptionist buzzed my desk. "Someone's asking for you," she said, voice hesitant. Through the window, I saw Caitlin's car parked crooked across 2 spaces. She was leaning against it, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky, shoulders shaking. I knew that performance too. I stepped outside. She rushed toward me, mascara streaked, voice high and cracked. "You can't just disappear. Who does that to someone they love?" I stopped a few feet away. "You left me bleeding in a hospital, Caitlin. I just made it official." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You could have told me it was that serious." "I did. You said you couldn't let Nico down. You're being cruel." "No," I said. "I'm just done." She squared her shoulders. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "Just done." Her breathing hitched. "You think people won't find out what you did? You think they won't take my side?" I met her eyes steady. "They already have." I turned and walked back toward the building. She shouted something behind me, but I didn't bother catching the words. Inside, the receptionist looked like she wanted to ask what just happened. I just said, "She's lost," and went back to work. That night, I sat in my new apartment with a beer and my laptop open. The air was still, the city quiet outside the window. I didn't go looking. Anything I saw found me through other people. Caesar texted one line. "She posted another closure video. You're trending." I typed back, "Good. Maybe she'll finally get the attention she wanted." He replied with a single thumbs up. I leaned back against the couch and watched the light fade across the ceiling. The noise was over. The chaos belonged to her now. Peace wasn't loud, it was absence. The space she used to fill with drama was now occupied by nothing but calm. And for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming. A week after the parking lot scene, I decided to post the story. Not to vent, not to get even, just to clear the noise. I opened Reddit, typed out what happened in plain sentences. No drama, no adjectives, no blame, just the sequence. Hospital, the concert, the note, the silence. I hit post and shut the laptop. An hour later, the notifications started. Comments rolled in fast. Hundreds, then thousands. Most were from men who recognized the pattern. Same tone, same story, different names. One comment stood out. "This time, bro, is the storm that's approaching." That one made me laugh. I remember DMC5. By the next day, the post hit the front page. DMs came in from strangers, some thanking me, others sharing their own stories. A few said I was heartless, but even they sounded like they wished they'd done the same. Then someone connected the dots. A user found Caitlin's public page, matched the timeline, and confirmed her face from the old pictures still floating around the internet. Her name spread faster than I thought possible. Within 48 hours, she was trending for all the wrong reasons. Her healing journey posts filled with comments, some supportive, most not. Screenshots of her old videos, her bragging about loyalty, about choosing your man over drama, circulated with side-by-sides of her recent ones about emotional abuse. The hypocrisy wasn't hard to spot. Within a couple of days, 2 small brand sponsors quietly stepped back. Another posted a vague values note. I didn't feel proud, but I didn't feel guilty either. She built the audience. She sold the image. The crowd just stopped buying it. Caesar came over that night carrying takeout and his phone already open. He dropped onto the couch, scrolling with a grin. "Listen to this," he said, reading one of her new captions out loud. "Healing from narcissistic abuse, one boundary at a time." He looked up. "Girl, you were the narcissist." I chuckled. At least she's working on self-awareness, one post at a time. Caesar shook his head. "You've officially achieved peaceful villain status. You didn't say a word and she still burned her own brand. That's how fires start." I said, "Friction and air." He smirked. "You're the friction, huh?" I'm the silence. We ate in quiet after that. The laughter came easy, the kind that doesn't hide pain. It just outlasts it. I tossed my phone on the counter and sat back on the couch. The city lights spilled through the blinds, painting faint lines across the wall. Somewhere out there, she was probably still trying to spin a story that made sense to her. But for me, the story was over. No revenge, no guilt, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that truth doesn't need help to surface. It just needs time. I opened the window, let the cool night air in, and closed my eyes. The noise was gone, and for once I didn't miss the sound. It started with a message request on a quiet Tuesday morning. The name didn't ring a bell at first. Eve Lauron. The first line read, "You don't know me, but I know Nico." I opened it. She introduced herself as his ex, said she'd seen my post and wanted to share something. Attached were screenshots, messages, receipts, transfers, and photos. Proof of every lie he'd ever told. He wasn't just a cheat, he was a scam artist. He'd taken money from women, investments in his music career that never existed. Eve had the full archive and was ready to make it public. "Do it," I wrote back. By Friday, she did. Her thread exploded. Screenshots, voice notes, fake invoices. The artist, Nico Moreno, was exposed as a fraud. Most of the smaller venues backed away. His profile started getting flagged for review, and his fan accounts turned on him. The man who once bragged about owning the stage couldn't even get booked at an open mic. I didn't comment, didn't gloat. Karma handled it better than I ever could. A few days later, I got an unexpected email from Caitlin's mother. The subject line, "We're sorry." It was short, polite, and heavy with embarrassment. She said they'd heard about everything. Caitlin was home now, working through things. They didn't excuse her behavior, but hoped I'd find peace. Peace wasn't the issue anymore. I already had it. Caitlin's next move was predictable. She reappeared online, claiming she'd been manipulated by bad people and under the wrong influence. No more fiery captions about empowerment, just vague posts about redemption and therapy, but it wasn't redemption. It was damage control. Through whispers and mutual contacts, I heard she'd taken a job at a retail store in her hometown. Minimum wage, long hours, constant eyes from people who remembered her Instagram fame. She'd gone from sponsorships and brand deals to folding shirts and pretending she didn't hear the gossip. Caesar called it poetic justice. I called it consequence. My lawyer finalized everything that week, closing the lease, untangling the few joint purchases, and settling the last bills. Every document had a clear ending. Every signature a clean edge, no drama, no mess. Then the letter came. A real one, handwritten, folded neatly in an envelope that smelled faintly of her perfume, my name written in her looping handwriting across the front. I read it standing by the kitchen counter just once. She wrote that she'd fallen apart under stress, that Nico had taken advantage of her loyalty, that she never meant to hurt me. She said she missed how calm I made her feel, how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. Half apology, half revisionist history, I finished it and let out a quiet breath. It wasn't influence, I said to no one. It was choice. That night I went out to the backyard. The air was cold enough to sting. I dropped the letter into the small metal fire pit and struck a match. The flame took its time, curling the paper from the corners inward. The ink bled, her words turning to smoke before they could cling to anything real. Caesar showed up halfway through with a six-pack, and that look he gets when he knows not to talk yet. He stood beside me, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the fire eat through the last scraps. When it was done, he cracked open 2 beers and handed me one. "Closure looks good on you, man." I took a sip. "Yeah," I said. "Peace fits better than she ever did." He laughed low and genuine. "You really going to keep being that quotable, or you want a job writing Hallmark cards for broken men?" I smiled. "Too many words, I like my endings quiet." We stood there watching the embers fade to orange dust. Caesar nodded toward the pit. "You know, she'll probably post about this someday. Healing through fire or something." "She can," I said, "but this was for me, not her audience." He raised his bottle. "To distance." I raised mine, then to distance. The wind carried the ashes out of the pit and scattered them across the yard. They vanished into the dark, leaving nothing behind but a faint smell of smoke and freedom. Caesar headed inside to catch the game. I stayed for another minute, listening to the hum of the neighborhood. For once, it didn't sound like background noise. It sounded like peace. I looked down at the fire pit, cold now, blackened metal, empty center. There was nothing left to burn. Caitlin's story had finally run out of fuel. 6 months can change everything. The noise died down, the headlines disappeared, and life went quiet in a way I hadn't realized I needed. The apartment I'd rented after leaving Caitlin became just a stopover. I moved into a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just space that felt mine. A single-story place with a backyard, a decent garage, and walls that didn't echo with someone else's voice. Work stayed steady. I took a promotion quietly. No celebration, just another project delivered on time. The team trusted me. The younger guys listened when I talked. Routine became rhythm. Up at 6 o'clock, gym at 7, office by 9. Evenings were for small things, cooking, fixing, reading, living. The garage became my favorite room. Inside sat a stripped-down motorcycle I'd bought years ago, but never finished rebuilding. Caitlin used to hate it, said it was too loud, that it ruined her concentration when she filmed. So I pushed it into a corner and left it there, half assembled and collecting dust. Now it was mine again. Every evening after work, I'd roll up my sleeves, grab a wrench, and lose myself in the sound of turning bolts. The smell of oil and metal beat any therapy session I could have paid for. Piece by piece, the bike came back to life. Caesar dropped by sometimes, pretending he was helping, but mostly drinking beer and talking nonsense. "You realize that bike's the healthiest relationship you've ever had?" he said one night, leaning against the doorframe. At least it doesn't talk back, I told him. He laughed. True, but it also doesn't cook, clean, or cheat. So you're breaking even. I'll take predictable over complicated any day. He raised his bottle. Too predictable, I nodded. To peace. Life became simple again. Gym, work, garage, sleep. I didn't chase noise anymore. I didn't check Caitlin's world, though bits of it still drifted my way. Someone mentioned she was still online posting self-love videos, pretending the storm never happened. Every clip was another layer of polish over the same cracked surface. I didn't judge her. I just didn't care. The people around me started to notice the difference. My team at work said I looked lighter. My mom said I sounded present again. Caesar said I'd finally stopped grinding my teeth when I slept on his couch. Freedom wasn't about being alone. It was about not needing to explain peace to anyone. One Saturday, I was in the garage polishing the tank when I heard tires crunch on the driveway. I wiped my hands and looked up. Eve stepped out of a gray SUV, sunglasses in hand, hair tied back. We hadn't talked since she'd blown Nico's lies wide open. Her post had gone viral for a week, long enough to bury his reputation for good. Last I heard, he'd left town, owing too many people money to show his face. Didn't think you'd actually be home, she said. I'm predictable, I replied. She smiled. That's a compliment these days. I grabbed 2 waters from the fridge and handed her one. We sat on the small porch, the bike between us, sunlight bouncing off the chrome. Figured I should thank you, she said. If you hadn't posted your story, I probably wouldn't have found the courage to post mine. I didn't do much, I said. He burned that bridge himself. Still, she said, watching a man handle betrayal without turning bitter, it hit hard. I shrugged. Anger's expensive. I couldn't afford to keep paying for it. She laughed softly. Guess we both learned the same lesson. Some people don't change. They just rebrand. We talked for another hour, mostly about everything except the past. Music, travel, bad coffee, better days. There wasn't tension or spark, just mutual understanding. 2 people who'd walked through the same fire and made it out without the smoke. When she stood to leave, she glanced back at the bike. Looks almost done, she said. Almost, I replied. The rest's just detail. Kind of like life, she said with a grin. Exactly. She waved and drove off, leaving behind the faint smell of engine grease and sunlight. A week later, the bike was finished. Every bolt tightened, every wire wrapped clean. I polished the tank until I could see my reflection clearly. A face less angry, more settled. Caesar showed up that morning as usual, carrying 2 coffees. You actually finished it, he said, walking around it like a museum piece. Damn, you even painted it the same color as your old car. Consistency, I said. He laughed. You naming it? Yeah, I said, smirking. Freedom. Of course you are, he said, shaking his head. So what now? Gonna start a new chapter? Meet someone? Maybe a woman who doesn't live stream arguments. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'll just ride for a while. He raised his cup. Fair enough, just don't crash it. The irony would kill me. I started the engine. The garage filled with a low, steady growl. The kind of sound that used to annoy Caitlin. The kind that now felt like a heartbeat syncing with mine. Loud, Caesar shouted over the noise. Perfect, I shouted back. Yeah, that's peace talking. That evening I rolled the bike out into the driveway. The sun dipped low, painting everything in gold. I sat there for a minute, helmet resting on the handlebar, letting the quiet soak in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Out of habit, I checked it. A suggested post popped up. Caitlin posing on some beach with the caption, "Healing never stops, choose love, choose light, same filters, same audience, same script." I looked at it for a moment, then opened her profile. The page loaded. Dozens of new posts, all polished, all hollow. I hit delete contact and block in one motion. No emotion, no nostalgia, just the final click of closure. She chose applause, I said to myself. I chose silence. The engine idled beside me, steady and confident, and silence never loses. I slipped on my helmet and started down the road. The air hit cool against my face, the engine roaring beneath me like an old friend finally free to speak. The city blurred behind me, replaced by open road and fading light. For once, I wasn't chasing or escaping anything, I was just moving forward. As the sky turned orange, I thought about everything behind me. The lies, the noise, the chaos. They were distant now. Like static on a radio I'd finally switched off. I twisted the throttle, let the bike surge ahead, and smiled beneath the helmet. It wasn't revenge at all. It was peace so loud they couldn't ignore it. It was peace so loud they couldn't ignore it.